everybody. Welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking to David Duford. David, it's great to connect with you. I love everything we're going to talk about today, and I'm really excited. You are the CEO of Duford Insurance Group, a virtual insurance agency helping new and experienced agents nationally become top producers. And what I love about this is that it's virtual. And I think 20 years ago, if somebody said, hey, I'm going to start a virtual, insurance agency, people would say, are you nuts? You need an office, you need this. And even up until a year ago, before COVID, I think people were probably just not certain about not having a physical space. And so, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here. This show is all about, I'm a business coach, and this show is all about what I do for a living is I work with successful people who are stuck and I get them unstuck. And my goal is to provide people content that gets them unstuck. And so that's why I love having guests like you on, because you're not only changing the model, but you're opening up minds as well. And so where I really want to dive in is, where did you get the idea to create this virtual platform, and how has it accelerated over the past year?
Well, it was always my goal through college and then getting into the workforce to have my own business where I can make a very good income, but not have a single employee. The dream of mine.
Yeah.
And so,
I always say that business is easy. People make it difficult.
That's right. It's exactly. So it kind of spawned into this idea of a national approach. And at the time that I started my agency, content marketing was really picking up steam. YouTube became huge, and that's one of my biggest avenues to people to find me. And so it just allowed me to facilitate this process to create this agency that didn't need a brick and mortar location, that I could train people virtually. They could log in, watch trainings live, see recordings, etc., call and set up times, and get the same effect as if I was there right in their hometown.
Mm-hmm. Well, and let's talk about that, because you're talking about you're talking about people being able to kind of just download and talk about the are people downloading? How did you see the people kind of gravitating to that?
As far as the virtual side of the business?
As far as the virtual side of the business, I mean, how quickly did they kind of conform to what was happening?
Well, I think it's unique. I don't know if this is a function of our business. There's just not a lot of good, solid sales training programs available to agents. If your viewers have been involved in insurance sales or looked into it, there is a definite multi-level marketing appeal to it. Mm-hmm. And there's more of an emphasis on recruiting than there is on training. And I think where that led me to go was down more the training an agent how to sell than training them how to recruit friends and family, right? So since there's such a severe lack of training, I think it was pretty easy to convince somebody to come on board, even in a virtual environment, because they could get what it is that they want that they couldn't find locally, which is a system or a process to find prospects, convince them to buy, and then repeat and duplicate that process. So I think given the environment, trying to find somebody who knows what they're doing just allowed that virtual process to formulate that much easier.
Yeah, I understand that. And so let's talk about YouTube for a minute. I want to talk about social media. You're a YouTube influencer. You've got over 18,000 subscribers. You're more than 1.5 million total views. And I think a lot of people struggle with A, do I grow my YouTube channel? B, how do I grow it? And what type of content do I grow it with? And so, how were you able to, rewind and get to your first 1,000 and then 2,000 and then 3,000? Because I think the law of proximity now may be too big. So now rewind and then talk about how you grew it.
So I started in 2014, a completely different environment than it is today. There's certainly more competition. But more eyeballs too. But I think the way that I looked at it is I identified a niche where there was a demand for information, but was not fulfilled. And it so happened that the business that I sold insurance into, I could create useful content. For example, how to pre-qualify a prospect, how to handle objections, that kind of stuff. And I went to work on creating content, and I consistently did it. on a daily basis when I started, then got away from it for a long time. And then it dawned on me that, hey, this whole content creation thing, if I do more of it, more people watch.
Yeah.
And the more people watch, they subscribe. And then a lot of those subscribers turn into actual agents in my agency. So in 2018, it was the aha moment. I started doing daily content consistently. And since then, I've done one piece of content at least a day. And it has been the biggest resource for finding agents. And then not only just finding agents in business, but the way they interact with me. We can talk about this. The celebrity-like effect that YouTube provides is incredible. But it all comes down to fundamentals, guys. Create great content that helps people, that helps them raise to a position that's of better knowledge or better understanding than had they not watched it, and do that on a consistent basis.
But let's talk about that. I'm a big content provider, David. I do 7-day-a-week podcasts. I do five lives on top of that every single week. Used to do more. Sometimes I do up to 8. Daily tips. I think people have a hard time comprehending, when I look at it and I say, okay, now I'm going to double what I'm doing, right? And so talk about content, how to create it, and how, to me, it's like you're only annoying if you think you are. But you got to provide content. And sometimes you'll repel people, but that's okay because you will attract the right people who want to see all your content.
Right.
So how do you create the content is my question.
Here's a couple of simple tips, I think. And it's going to depend on your niche, but a good search tool would be just using YouTube search or Google search. Put in the keywords that represent the concepts that you want to talk about and see what YouTube and Google are suggesting. You see, what Google and YouTube are trying to do is keep users on their platform and keep them satisfied. And so they're going to suggest search terms that are commonly used. So, you type it in and you get kind of an auto-completed result. Those are good ideas as to what to base your content around. The next thing you need to do is, once you find some ideas that fit, is to actually look at what the search results show. Are they indicative of what the search result is? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Can you provide a different perspective that's valuable? You don't want to necessarily do the same exact thing, but maybe you have a different angle on it that would be a useful addition to show up in the top 3 rankings. And to do that for all of the search terms you come up with. And some of it's going to stick. Some of it's going to rank. That's how you're going to find people who are just searching around that don't know who you are. And that's how you get them into your pipeline.
Yeah. I can't agree. I agree with you 2000%. Content, daily content is the way to grow. And it's not about being an overnight success. It's about being an overnight success in 3 years, 10 years, 5 years, and looking forward and saying, okay, in 1 year, I'm going to have this much content, and then rewinding and working backwards. So I love what you're talking about. So, go ahead.
For your viewers, if I could show this, it would be a beautiful representation of what you're saying. Like if you go look at the views on my channel in 2014, 15, 16, they're like this. Well, I guess it's on this. They're like poop, like this. And then 2017, big bump. 2018, big bump. And so all of that created content starts to just manifest itself in the rankings. And look, have a long-term vision to do this, guys. If you want to do YouTube or any social media, there's still opportunity there. You just have to have a long-term game plan. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, no, amen to that. So, you're a virtual insurance agent. You're also the author of The Official Guide to Selling Insurance for New Agents, The Official Guide to Selling Final Expense Insurance, and the interviews with top producing insurance agents. And so what I love about that is on top of the content you're creating for YouTube and on social media, you're also putting it in writing and you're putting it in book form. And so talk about just the power of the written word on how that grows your brand.
Good question. So it's funny, even in 2021, where I don't know, I assume most people are digesting content through video, audio, television, streaming, etc. There's still power in saying, I wrote the book on that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, final expense insurance. Yeah, Dave wrote the book on that. There's an immediate level of authority you get out of sitting down, writing a book, and putting it together. So, it was the first real, besides YouTube, it was the first big attempt at creating a bigger piece of content. And in a sense, it did kind of put my name on the map because there wasn't a lot of my competition doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So, and books can be very simple. The green one over here, I wrote like 2 years ago. It's 100 pages Guys, if you want to write a book, record yourself on your computer. 3 hours of audio probably is 100 pages. Get somebody to edit it, and you've got a book. You're a written author. That's what I did for all 3 of my books.
Yeah,
very well. But it's profoundly important in building your brand.
I really appreciate what you just said, because I wrote a book a few years ago, David, and I wrote the book. I had a co-writer. I would write, he would then edit. And I always say, I'm not a writer, but I love to write. And behind every great writer is a better editor. Yes, and there are many times where, I blog a ton, but sometimes I don't have time to actually sit down and write the blog. So I will have a team of editors that work with me, where if I can't write it, they will interview me. I will send them a keynote that I did. They'll interview me. I'll send them an outline, and then they know my voice, and so they can write, for me, and with me, and then I can. And so the process of writing, a lot of times, and the reason I bring it up is because you're talking about providing a ton of content. I provide a ton of content. You can't do it by yourself. You need to find the ways that are not shortcuts, that work within the realm of just the being of who you are. And so, I think I just, everything we're talking about today is content. So now your target audience sees this content. You're a virtual insurance agency. So tell us a little bit about your business. Do you target current insurance people? Do you target new people who want to get into the business, and then you teach them the system? How does that work?
Most of my agents are coming on board because they find me because they have a problem, right? People go to YouTube to solve a problem. They have a question, they need an answer. Likewise for Google. So it tends to be newer agents that are trying to figure out where they stand in the scheme of things. And they just so happen to stumble across one of my pieces of content. This is how all YouTubers will tell you. They find a piece of your content, they go down the black hole, and then they come out the other side and they're like totally sold on you, right? So that's kind of the process of which most are new agents who are brand new licensed. They got into the business because there's a big MLM type of push, and they didn't realize the setup that they were shown wasn't exactly what they were going to get. And so they're doing their due diligence, and they find what I have to say. Yeah. Sometimes they run across experienced agents. They need a change. Maybe they worked with one of these companies and they're ready to move on. And they're, again, asking questions using YouTube and Google to find me. And they just stumble across me because I set myself up as a authoritative, trustworthy source to help people out.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things I love about content, for example, is, there are so many people who are stuck in 2005 to 2008 and some in the 1990s, and they'll rest on their credentials, right? These are my credentials, and boom, boom, boom. But to be relevant today, you also have to balance and support your credentials with real-time credibility. And that real-time credibility, in my opinion, and I think we're speaking the same language, is what are you doing today to prove that your credentials are still relevant in advising me to today's market? And so, how do you guide people, when you bring on the insurance agents to actually then build themselves, right? Build their own brand.
Well, I think here's how I look at it. The world we live in is such there's a scarcity of transparency, and people don't know what to believe, and people think, and then I say just as a whole, where do you go? What do you do to get the best source of information? And I think this is what I try to convey in my agency. I'm going to tell you the good and the bad, and we're all biased, but with as little bias as I can, without any strings attached. There's no underhanded thing I'm trying to pull on you. Likewise, as agents, the same concept, the worldview I try to teach too, is you tell your clients the good and the bad of what it is that we're looking at. They're not used to hearing this. They're expecting salespeople to tell them half-truths or lies. Instead, when they hear the good and the bad, and they're allowed to make their own decision, it's empowering. It was a constant thing my agents and myself will hear is, well, I really thank you for telling me everything you did. I didn't realize that the fine print said this was so-and-so company. And those are the type of people that want to do business with you, because when somebody will tell you the good and the bad, that's just unusual. It's usually some angle or bias that people are pulling. And so you got to change your shift in your mindset. And it may seem kind of risky at first, but it actually pays off in the long term tremendously.
Yeah. When you tell everybody the good, the bad, and you're transparent, sometimes it sounds so simple, it's complicated, and they're
Yes.
looking for what's not being told. And, as a business coach, I always like to break things down to the very simple. But sometimes people say, well, what else do you need to do? Well, that's it. Right. Like, you're talking about content. I'll advise people, I do a lot of business tips and I do them live now just because the technology is easy to do it. And when I do them live, it saves time with me recording it, uploading it to Dropbox, sending it to my team, having them load it. I mean, but when I used to record them, I would do 100 at a time and I would change my close every 7 tips. And it would take me about 2 hours, but it would be a year's worth of content. And so people say, how do you do tips? I said, this is how I do it. I start with a suit. I take off my tie after 7. I take out, you know what I mean? And so they're like, but what else? That's it. Well, how do you come up with all the content? I make a list, right? So it's like you and you're in the business and I'm in the business of providing a ton of content. So I love everything. I love everything that you're talking about. David, you ready for a quick speed round?
Sure, go for it.
All right. Behind you have a lot of books. Favorite book and why?
Oh boy. Let's see. Besides mine.
Sure. Besides yours.
I think Atlas Shrugged is back there somewhere. I like Atlas Shrugged. It kind of was my moment in my young life where I realized Atlas Shrugged is a book about business, essentially a story of business people disappear and the consequences of it. So it's kind of a awakening, I guess you could say, for me when I was a young man getting into business. So that was a pretty important book.
It's funny. You're the second person in the last week that has said that was their favorite book. I haven't heard it be somebody's favorite book in a while, and now 2 in 1 week. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Never hire friends and family.
That's a good one. That's a good one. And finish this sentence. One thing every business owner or business person can do to turn their business into a more virtual business is?
Oh boy. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
All right, I'll give you another one. Finish this sentence. Right, just do it. I think that's a great one. I'll finish this sentence. One thing everyone can do to provide more content starting today is
pick up the phone and film. Just
film.
Just do it. I mean, really, it's just that it's that easy. Decide to do it and take action while it's still hot in the mind.
Yeah, and leave your ego. I would say, and leave your ego at the door, right? Don't worry about how you look. You're not going to look perfect. Just go and do it.
Guys, I'm a natural introvert. All right. Like I started off, I used to be afraid of calling Pizza Hut to order pizza. There's so much fear of that. You get over this stuff. Everything's learnable. Yeah.
I love it. David, tell everybody again who your ideal client is and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah. So my ideal client would be a person who wants a career change, somebody who's not happy working whatever they're doing. They're looking for independence, freedom, and the ability to make a good income at the same time. And they're willing to explore an opportunity like insurance sales. If you want to learn more about how that works, go to davidduford.com. Check out the menu at the top. You're going to see a free insurance agent resource guide. It's a great place to start if you're unfamiliar with this business, to learn more about the different niches, how we market, how to learn this process, and to see again if what I do is a good fit for it. So davidduford.com.
I love it. I love it. A couple of thoughts I just want to share as we kind of finalize, and some of the things that you shared today, which I think are critical. The importance of being relevant and really putting your ego on the side, and just whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, getting out there and providing daily content. Nothing builds credibility like having a book, let alone 3 books like you have. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Like you were saying, record yourself for 3 hours, send it to an editor, and create a book. Be completely the importance of transparency, which I think is so important. Share with everybody the good and the bad, so there's no discovery of things later on. And the importance of mindset, which I think are so important. And like I shared earlier, I'm a business coach that works with people who are successful and stuck and get them unstuck. And a lot of things that you shared today will help people get unstuck. DavidDuford.com. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. Think community. I appreciate you tuning in. If David can help you, please give him a shout. Also, if you would like my books, How to Think Big, my ebook, 100-page plus ebook and workbook, and my book, The Think Big Movement, you can download it for free at johndwoskin.com. David, can't thank you enough for being on the show. Thanks so much for shedding your wisdom with us. Wish you all the best and great success for everything. Think Community, davidduford.com. Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Hey, John. See you.